Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5-Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Yo, what's happening, Rush Nation? Welcome back to the Flagship, the mothership, the one and only ship, the only ship you need in your harbour. Too many ships before this gets us in trouble. Big man, how are you?
All good, brother. All good. It's draft week next week, so it's exciting times for the league. It's time to start thinking about new drafts. Done a couple of best balls. Got a dynasty that kicked off yesterday, so I feel like fantasy season is back. It's time to get really smart about this draft class. With the draft next week, I keep getting a lot of questions around this class and what I sort of think. And, it's really exciting for running backs, maybe not quite as exciting for wide receivers, but I think there's some really good talent available and like some good dart throws at the wide receiver position. So keen to see where it all shakes up come the end of the draft in sort of, what are we looking at? 12 days time or so. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it all shakes out, and we'll have a better view of what's going to happen in 2025 at the end of the draft.
This period running up to the draft, for me personally, I love and hate in equal measure, because especially when you're writing like I have been, you have to try and decipher which players you want to write about, because as a father of a 6-year-old, a member of the full-time working crew, and somebody who's in the middle of a house renovation, there isn't enough time for me to write about everybody. So I had to choose people I wanted to write about, have written about them, and potentially in 12 days' time, some of this could be completely irrelevant.
I mean,
to be fair, I do love it, and it's not far away now, so it makes everything, the culmination of my work and stuff, it's going to be good. There'll be some stuff that isn't relevant, but there'll be some stuff that is definitely relevant, and I won't have wasted too much time in doing so. So it's really close, and there'll be those prospects that we think are absolutely red hot that just fade into just nothing. I want to go back a few years. Trey Sermon, I thought he was going to be the next big thing. Ended up not really being anything ever.
A lot of people thought that. I think it's a good point to think about the noise. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of noise. A lot of people that kind of plant their flag and got their guy and all this, right? And I think people don't pivot when the information is presented to them. I think that's kind of the key learning. And then some people overcorrect, like they've gone down that route of, say, the Trey Sermon, or they've picked a guy and they found someone who's very similar in type, like, I'm not going to get burned again, so I'm not going to go down this route. And I think it's just really important to be quite objective with your takes. Don't fall in love too soon, and go with that. Should also point out there's some really sad news over the weekend that somebody who might have been drafted in this draft class, Kyron Lacey, died age 24, and it's been a difficult process. He was responsible through dangerous driving, killing somebody back in January, which kind of meant that it was unlikely that he would have been drafted given that process was going on, and unfortunately took his own life because of what's been going on. So, it goes to show the pressure of the draft. I mean, you've got to think, for us, it's fun. For these people, it's their lives, and anything can happen that can just take their dream away in an instant. And some of it can be self-inflicted. In the case of like Henry Ruggs, some could be, just really tragic and awful circumstances. And it's just really sad when you see someone take their own life because of a mistake and it's something they've done. But thoughts are with his family through this difficult time. I know they won't be listening, but it's always that balance of, when we talk about players and there'll be criticisms of players and this and that, the throwback to that is it's not personal. Like, it's not about the player or the character. Maybe sometimes we point to the character, But ultimately, it's, we're here to be objective and look at what these players can do for fantasy, and also to caveat what we did in the last show, that actually the way that we're talking about them for fantasy does not necessarily reflect how they're going to be on the field. And I think so many times people try and associate great performance on the field can create elite fantasy performance, and that's not always the case. And that actually scheme fit and landing spots are important. The analytics folks, and I'm an analytics folk, will try and tell you that landing spots aren't important, that draft capital is more important than landing spots. I just don't subscribe to that theory. I personally believe that landing spots are more important, and we're seeing this with more and more late round picks starting to be fantasy relevant early, especially at the running back position. Over the last 6 or 7 years, there's been 7 or 8 running backs that have put in a top 24 performance that have come from the later rounds. Bucky Irving did it just this past year. So there are opportunities late round, especially in this draft. I'd expect that to be. So, landing spot and opportunity is just as important, if not more important than draft capital in certain degrees. There's a reason why certain players can fall, and it could be size, type. It could be a lot of reasons.
Yeah, and a fall for fantasy and landing spot. We have these absolute high hopes for players, and they go to a place where they're the third running back on the depth chart and absolutely obscure from the day one, even if we absolutely love them. I'm trying to think of the kid's name now. Played for the Cowboys. That's not the NFL Cowboys either. That's the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Their running back got drafted by the Lions. Absolutely loved him as a prospect. Went to the Lions. I think he's probably played about 15 snaps since drafted. His name escapes me now, which is really, really bad. But
yeah, I'm just trying to think. I'm scratching my head now.
Should definitely get this. I don't have any free tabs to open up. My laptop is old and struggling, and if I click plus, oh come on, Christopher. That's technically my given name. If nobody knew that, I am Christopher. You know me as Stocks, but hey, yeah. So Murf and I are going to try and do running backs and wide receivers in today's show, only because the draft is coming. It's coming quick, and who knows what's just around the corner, right?
Yeah, it's exciting, and I think we're going to start with doing running backs and wide receivers. So we're giving you all the information. And hot take, I have a very different running back at the top of my board to absolutely everybody else, and I'm going to come in and try and explain sort of why I have that mindset and why I'm a little bit different here compared to everybody else.
Okay, well, we might as well start at running backs just because you've opened that can of worms now. So who do you have at one apart from Ashton Genty?
I have Amarian Hampton. He for me, I think, is my one in this class. I think for me, there's a couple of reasons. I'm sort of, first of all, I'm always a person that's going to swim slightly away from the tide. I think I've kind of always have demonstrated that is the type of person I am. I just have an issue with consensus 101s. Like, it's just like a given that he's the best running back in this class, and it's like you can't challenge it. And I just kind of think, like, why can't we challenge it? Like, I'm just a bit like, why can't we? Why can't it be a little bit different? I think that for me is kind of important. Is that thing? He's got a lot of tread on his tires, this kid. Like, a lot. We're not talking about a player who, sort of skipped a few years. We're talking about a player who, rightfully so, through name recognition, was in the Heisman Trophy reckoning, and he pulled up some absolute stonking numbers last year. I mean, it was impressive what he did. And it's not a slight on talent at all. I just always am a little concerned when you've got these players that are just the anointed one, and it kind of just feels like there needs to be some due diligence on the rest of the class and kind of just dig in a little bit more and understand about the rest of the class. And as I've got more into it, I wanted to understand more about this that I've really dug into and understood more Omarion Hampton. And I just think for me, his skill set is incredibly sort of undervalued, I think is fair to say, in this draft. And I'm really looking forward to explaining sort of why I have him rated so highly.
Okay. There's 4 running backs in this class who I think could all potentially be unbelievably good for fantasy purposes and in the NFL. And I am fully on board with you don't have to have Genty as your one. If you see something in another player that you think actually could be the reason to have him as the one, then I'm fully with you, mate. I just, Ashton Genty, Travion Henderson, Caleb Johnson, Ollie Gordon, those 4 players for me, absolutely in love with. And I appreciate 2 of them could be Trey Sermon. But at the moment, I am those 4, love them. So the fact you've got Omarion Hampton there, I not one of my 4, but I understand why.
Yeah, I just think for me, the thing I like about Omarion Hampton is just 2 years of production that were incredibly valuable, but it's literally only 2 years of production. So there is still a lot of tread still on those tires. You talk about a player who had a decent number of receptions. You've got a player who tested quite well. He also, did also work a little bit in the old special teams numbers as well. So, I just think for me, he's got a lot of versatility. I can look at him and think he's someone I can spread into a lot of teams and can really get some good production right away. And again, this isn't to say that Genty isn't. Genty's an incredible player. My big concern with Genty is this: if Genty goes into the league, because of the amount of work he has done, I am concerned that he is going to be, I don't want to say an injury risk, but I do look at that and think with the amount of work on his tires and the amount of work he has done, there is a concern that he could be a little bit cooked. And we've seen it before. Loads of players coming into the NFL who perhaps have just carried a huge workload. I'm just trying to pull up his numbers. If I look at how many carries Genty had in college, he had 750. Like, it's a ridiculous. He carried the ball 374 times last year. Like, that is a ridiculous amount. Like, it's a little unsustainable when it's that level. Like, 750 touches is a lot. And you got Hampton, who's coming in like 300 less than that. And that matters. Like, it really, I know a lot of people are going to go, oh, it doesn't really matter. I think it matters a heck of a lot. And I just worry with someone like Genty that, he comes in with a little bit of an injury risk because of all of that. And if he just, gets caught. And then the other thing for me is I look at, the rivalry with both these players is they're not coming from big conferences and big schools. Who is going to be prepared to take the hits? Genty's 5'8". He's a little bit lighter in terms of size. Whereas you look at Hampton, he's 6 foot, he's 221. He's a little bit sort of more ready for this sort of line of contact, I think. So again, I'm just sort of thinking about durability, pathways to success. And I think Genty, if he stays fit, there's an easy pathway to him being the number one in this class. But I just think for me, Hampton has just he's a little more well-rounded for me. I think he is an absolute brilliant finisher. I think for me, he's great at getting those extra yards after contact, which is something that he's demonstrated over and over again. And he's got really, really good hands. Very underrated. I just think for me, he's got absolutely everything. He's got the speed, he's got the balance, he's got the stamina. He could be a 3-down back. And I think Genty has all of those traits as well. I just think for me, I think people were really going to like what they see in Hampton. And I think they're really going to enjoy what he can do through every phase of the game. And I just think for me, Genty's just a little bit smaller and he's just a little bit lighter. And it's not by much, but I mean, it could be one of those instances there, that frame, he gets hit, what happens, especially with all the tread on the tires, especially with all the work that's gone through. So I just think for me, I'm a bit cautious on Ginty. I think he's going to be his stock and his value is like Insta 101. And I think, like, for me, it's like, well, he's going to be drafted in the first round, I think, of regular drafts, barring something happening. But I think he's going to go in first, maybe early second round of drafts come August.
We see it every year, don't we? Every single year, the 101 running back goes in the first round. It is almost biblical now what we see every year.
And so I just want to think differently, right? So for me, it's like, if the tide is going that way, it's the same with Marvin Harrison last year. If the tide is going that way, he's going to have to deliver the best running back rookie season of all time to justify his value. And again, I'm sort of projecting here, and it's not a nice thing to do, but it's kind of what we do. It's thinking about outcomes. And I just think Hampton's going to come in at a much better price. I think I'm just going to have a lot more Hampton on my rosters. And I think that's just in my head. That is probably where I'm at. I'm going to have a lot more Hampton than I'm probably not going to have any Ginty in any league anywhere. Like, it's just not going to happen because I don't have any 101s.
I do. For the first time ever, I have a 101.
So I'm probably not going to own him. And that probably goes a little bit unfairly into the analysis that I think I'm just not going to get him. And I think he's going to be priced too high in a lot of cases. And I have some genuine concerns on durability. And I think you can call that fair. You can call that unfair. I just think for me, Hampton is just that more ready built, ready to go with the frame. And I just think he's got so many things I just absolutely love in terms of his tools and his ability to work. And I just think of the three running backs that I say, now listen, I have all three of these as potentially elite players, Hampton, Ginty, and the next one on the list. So I have them in what I call my potentially elite tier. So I don't hate anyone that has Ginty at 1. I don't think that's wrong. I don't think that's unfair. I'm just saying I'm going to be a little bit different, and I'm happy to be a little bit different. I don't think there's a big measure between these three, but I just think for me, I've given the nod to Hampton because I just think the size and the less carries is just going to do it for me. Because I think there is very, very little to split these three running backs. I think the way that people talk about Ginty, they're talking about him as a generational talent and he's miles ahead of everybody else. And I don't have that view. I just don't. I don't think he is a generational talent. I think he's a very good player. But the same way that everyone's kind of anointed Bijan Robinson as a generational talent, and we just haven't seen it. He's a good player. Like, I'm not sitting there saying the Bijan Robinson's washed, right? I'm not. He's a very good player. But is he a generational talent? No, I don't even think he's a top 5 running back in this league. Maybe he's 5th, but he's not top 3 in this league. So if you're not top 3 in the league, are you a generational talent? No, I don't think you are. And I don't think any of these are generational talents. I think they're very good. I think they're very good players, but I don't think they're generational. I think they have the potential to be elite players. And by elite, I mean top 5, top 7 at the position. I don't think they're generational talents.
But the term generational talent in itself,
I hate it. Yeah.
There should be no such thing. A generational talent is one player who is at the pinnacle of their career for the duration of a generation. Tiger Woods did it. Tiger Woods is a generational talent because he was golf for 10 years, 15 years. That is a generational talent.
Tom Brady, all of these players, right? I agree. I don't disagree with you.
Over under Murf, more or less carries than Jonathan Taylor for Ashton Ginty in college.
I think it's close. My head says more, my heart says less. More.
Well, go with the heart. Jonathan Taylor had 926 carries in college, which is an absurd amount. And my point exactly is to where you're going. Look at Jonathan Taylor.
I mean, he had an elite couple of years. And then again, the injuries have stacked up and he's yet to really recapture that form that made him the consensus 101 a couple of years ago. So exactly that. I think the tread on the tires, I think even the guy I've got next on my list still, and he played 4 years, still only had 590. So again, I think there is something about coming in a little bit fresher, but have played to a standard. we'll see what happens. But again, I don't hate people that have GT 101, but far from it. But for me, I'm probably not going to own any of him. I think the price difference between Hampton and Genty is going to be huge, and I'm not going to subscribe to that. It's that old adage that if you've got two players that are relatively similar, take the cheaper player. I think that's what's going to happen in a lot of scenarios this year, and I think Hampton is going to be very well priced. Obviously, landing spots and everything can change that, but there's a chance that Hampton becomes very, very well priced. And if he is, he'll be an absolute steal for me.
I know. I don't submit to know that the state of the Las Vegas Raiders offensive line at the moment, but we saw historically the worst running game in the history of the NFL last year with their running backs. And if Genty goes there, doesn't matter how good you are if you don't have a line to run behind. And then if Hampton goes to the Denver Broncos, their offensive line isn't elite, but I think it's better than the Raiders. And that is...
Yeah, I think it's a hard thing to judge the Raiders. A lot of people kill that offensive line, but they're the worst quarterback play I've ever seen. It's probably slight hyperbole, but they had horrific quarterback play last year. And I think how much of that was errors led by quarterback and how much of that was the offensive line? It was probably a case of both, but I think you've got Geno Smith there. I think he's a more capable quarterback than what they've had. You've got Raheem Mostert they've signed. They're clearly going to use him in a significant role this year to wheel out and use. I think if the Raiders take a running back at 7, I think it's dumb. Like, I'm going to go as far to say that I think it is hilariously stupid. They have so many holes and so many needs. It's a luxury pick. When you're taking a running back in round 1, it's a luxury pick. I don't care how good the talent is. We saw it with Saquon Barkley and the New York Giants. They took Saquon Barkley at 2. What did that turn them into? It didn't really improve their fortunes. They had 1 year under the ball where they made the playoffs. I think that was in Barkley's 4th year in the league. Did he generate a lot of additional wins for that franchise? Maybe. How many additional wins? I mean, they're the losing record most years. Like, does Genty going to the Raiders make them a heck of a lot more competitive? Does he move the needle that much? No, I don't think he does. So I think you're right. If a running back goes there, I would lose interest. I would be more positive about it than if it was there last year, given the quarterback play. But I also think it's a luxury pick that's just absolutely wasted. And Pete Carroll's not a dumb guy. Like, I don't think Pete Carroll is that stupid. Like, I don't think, and I appreciate he's not the one making the final decision, but I don't think he's going to look at that and go, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna draft a running back this year, and we're gonna cook." Like, I think he will much rather. I think he'll draft one, but I don't think he drafts one at 7. I just think that would be ludicrous. Like, I just think all your set. I feel like it's John Gruden back in the building, like taking players that are just not going to push the needle in any way to that team. And I think that's something I feel. Whereas I think, if GT or whoever falls to the Broncos, then there's definitely a lot more excitement and intrigue there, or whoever lands there. And I think the Broncos are in a position where it's not a luxury pick. We're talking a playoff team from 12 months ago. They've made some good signings in free agency. They've filled some holes. Running back is probably the weakest position on that roster. I wouldn't begrudge the Broncos taking a running back because they're in a very different state of their build versus where the Raiders or anyone in the top 10 are really. I think if you're taking a running back in the top 10, I think you're nuts. And it's not because I don't value running backs. It's because you're in the top 10 for a reason. You've got a lot of holes. There's a lot of players there, trench players, really solid foundational players that you can pick there that are going to give you a lot of elite performance over a lot of years. Running back is a really short window. You should be picking them kind of as the cream on the top of your playoff run. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I view roster building. So that's me anyway. I like GT like to have. The third guy on my sort of potentially elite list is Tre'Verian Henderson. So I'm right there with you, and I like the fact that he has played I like the fact he's played in a big conference. I am concerned the fact that he has had injuries. In 2022 and 2023, he missed a lot of time. He can get a little bit too, in want of a better word, fancy when it comes to playing in the backfield. There's definitely some areas where he can get some negative plays, but I think with some coaching and being in a good setup, one of the charges that's levied at Henderson is his route tree isn't really all that expanded. I would go as far to say that more the scheme led to that than the skills of Henderson. I think he's got a wider skill set than perhaps what was on display at Ohio State. And so I think Henderson has a really good ability that if he gets into a good spot, could be a potentially elite player, top 7, top 8 at the position. Absolutely. But again, I think all three of these guys carry some risk. I think for me, Hampton probably carries the less risk to the other two. But, we're talking a guy who played 4 years in college, didn't have a lot of carries. He spread those out pretty equally around, averaging about 150 a year. His freshman year actually had his most carries. But he also didn't. His workload's been nicely managed, which I guess is a nice position, but then he also didn't have that elite carrying the ball 250, 300 times in a season. Does he have the skill set to do that? That's a big question mark on Henderson. I think he does, but I can understand why people are lower on Henderson than the other two. And I'm there, like I can get there. But I think for me, I look at the fact that he was probably a very underutilized back, given the kind of scheme that's run in Ohio. And I think for me, Henderson is coming from a big conference. He has demonstrated big games. There's stuff to clean up, but I think he'll get there and he'll be fine.
You have no idea how happy I am. You have Trevion Henderson in your top 3. Like, we very rarely agree on top end prospects in the running back position, and the fact you have Henderson in your top 3 is it's fantastic. I think exactly the same as you. He has got that he's got the ability to go warp speed on an NFL play and take it to the house. He's got that special something that you want from your NFL running back. And yes, he's been injured. I think the addition of Quinshon Judkins to the Ohio State backfield last year did not hurt or did not elevate him. But he's not the kind of back, I don't think, you don't want to be 250 carries a year. He's just like a Jahmyr Gibbs kind of guy. He's the less carries but more efficient. And I think if he can find a role like the Gibbs, not in the same with the Lions because they're doing stuff that everyone else just isn't at the moment, but that sort of role, I think it's going to suit him really well. And he's got that special something I like a lot.
Yeah. So you mentioned 4 in your elite tier. What was the 4th?
Caleb Johnson, Ohio.
Okay.
He's just smash mouth football. I just love the way he runs as a running back. And I think if he gets in a good sort of power football situation, he could do really well.
I can get into a world where I can see that for sure. So I have him in the tier down with Judkins and a few other players. So I have Judkins. I have Judkins next on my list. So the reason I have Judkins ahead, I think it was impressive the way he came into Ohio State and the way that he played. This guy's an absolute TD monster, averaging 15 touchdowns a season. He was absolutely crushing it in terms of his production, his yards per attempt. Didn't see as much in sort of the receiving game as we kind of thought. But there is some flashes of something there in him. But yeah, I think for me, Judkins, I think the only thing that goes against Judkins is he had a lot of tread on his tires. Again, he's up at that 750 because he had 2 massive years at Ole Miss. His freshman year was phenomenal, right? So his freshman year, he ran for almost 1,600 yards and 16 touchdowns. He dropped over 400 yards in his second season on pretty much the same touches. Now, it is the SEC. It is a bit harder to, get production. But that is quite, if you look at a team and you look at production and he's carried the ball 3 less times and he's carried it 400 yards less, there's something there. That he statistically has gotten worse every year, Judkins, which isn't a great thing. But
I think it's unfair to count statistically last year when he shared a backfield with Travion.
Yeah, but actually he was more efficient last year than he was in his sophomore year in terms of his yards per carries, his touchdown rate. Despite carrying the ball 80 yards less, he only had 1 less touchdown, right? So, look, I think that's my point, is he showed that explosiveness there. But, yeah, I think to say that he's not in the same tier as the other guys. Caleb Johnson is an interesting one because, as you say, he does play that sort of smash mouth football and he has a skill set that is very desirable.
For me, one of Caleb Williams, sorry to jump in, Murf, one of Caleb Williams' big things, I thought, was his pass protection. Caleb Johnson, sorry. He's really good at pass protection. And the NFL like that in their run. They're 3 down backs now, they can stay on the field, they will. And I think for me, it's just something about him I am really high on.
And listen, he's a good size. He's 6'1", he's 224. He's still got speed at 457 with that size, which is great. He is a proper workhorse back. If you look up the definition of workhorse back, Caleb Johnson last year was it. 21 rushing touchdowns last year. Not too much tread on the tires. Was conservatively used in his freshman and sophomore years. Yeah, was used quite a bit last year, but still only 508 carries. Put up a 1,500-yard season, 21 rushing touchdowns, showed some glimpses of what he can do with his hands as well. I think what I like about Caleb Johnson is he kind of has this really nice sort of tempo. He just appears absolutely like in control. And he just has that absolute, like, as you say, like the Jets, he's got the Jets on them. Big time, and he has a lot of big plays. Like, he had over 20 rushes of over 20 yards last year, and he faced a lot of stack boxes. So, like, for me, he's really like a solid player. The problem I have with him is just that 457 is quick, but it's not elite.
Yeah,
and I think that's what's going to kind of hold it back. He's quick, but he's not elite, and I think that little, what you call like in the round ball, half a yard, right? I just feel at times he's a bit half a yard off it. And I think that is the difference. If he had that extra half a yard pace, I think he would be absolutely devastating. I'm a little bit in disagreement with you on his pass pro. I actually think his pass pro is okay. I don't think it's great. I think he needs a lot of work. I think for me, he tends to sort of go down and lean with the shoulder whenever I've watched him. And so he doesn't have that proper like stance that he needs to. And because he goes with the shoulder, he gets knocked over quite easily. So I think he needs to work on that. I think that's an easy thing to fix. I don't think that's like a huge knock on him. But I also don't think that he's great, like in terms of sideline to sideline agility. I think that's the other thing that kind of lets him down, which is why I just don't have him up there. I think he's a weekly fantasy football starter. I think he's going to have a very good NFL career. I just don't think it's going to be a great one. I kind of liken him NFL career-wise to a bit like a Chris Carson. He'll do things and he'll have a very solid career. And I'm not saying he's like that as a player. I just kind of feel like he's going to have a very solid career that when it's all said and done, it's going to be kind of like, yeah, he did well, but he's never going to be talked about in those kind of elite circles. That's where I am on Caleb Johnson. I just think he's a solid player. And there's no knock on that. I'm just saying I just can't get there to him. Whereas I could say that if anyone was going to be out of this tier of 5 players I have, of players I think I could see being elite at the next level, I would have Judkins over Johnson at getting there. I just think Johnson's a very good pro. I think he's going to have a very good career. I think character-wise is top notch. But I just can't get there in seeing a high ceiling for him. But a very safe floor.
For those of you that are on the audio only version of this on the OG podcast platforms, you can't see my face. It's probably for the best. Chris Carson. I mean, there's plenty of other professionals who have had Chris Carson. Oh,
I'm
Caleb
not comping
Johnson.
him to. I'm just saying he's going to have a Chris Carson type career. If I had a
It
crystal
doesn't
ball,
matter. You've said the name. That comp is now there, regardless.
okay, fine. I'll own
Hate
it. It's fine. I'll own it. I'm good with that.
I oh, okay. Come on, let's carry on. More fantasy relevant running backs, Murf, because
So I have three more that I have in this sort of starter list, and that's Cam. I always get his name wrong. Scattlebow. I have Tootin and I have Devin Neal. Who do you want to talk about?
who was your third one?
Devin Neal.
No, I don't have him on my list of 15.
Okay, Devin Neal's got to be the guy then. So Devin Neal is a player I'm definitely intrigued quite a bit out of Kansas. He has had a lot of tread on his tires. It's a player who's had more carries than GT at 760.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, but he's a 4-year starter. So, that's why he spread that out over 4 years. He's played nearly 50 games in college. Kind of has these numbers that are good, but not eye-popping. Like consistently around that sort of 1,100, 1,200 yards off a couple of hundred carries a season. But his last 2 seasons have been highly productive, 16 touchdowns in each of his last 2 years on the ground. He's got 3 years of over 20 receptions, so he's shown you that he can catch the football. He is a person that can find the end zone pretty consistently. He has a profile that I think is definitely underrated. The thing that goes against Devin Neal is his speed. The 40 time's not great. For a 5'11", 213 back to run 458 is not. I mean, it's not great. It's not terrible, but it's not going to earn you the stock. And I think that's where he's probably come down a fair bit. I liken him a lot to Audric Estime and Tajay Spears. They're kind of like the players I look at him and think that he's that sort of player. He had opportunities to transfer. He didn't. But, I mean, the thing that I like about him is he's got this ability on the first step. So he's got this 458 speed, which isn't like lightning quick. But that first step, he's able to beat players with like initial burst off the line. So he doesn't have this like long trajectory kind of run, but he has quick acceleration out of the blocks. And that's what kind of gives him that boost, which actually in the running back is probably more important than that overall 40 time speed. Like, do you really care what he's running at 40, or do you care what he's doing in the first 10? Yeah. And it's that first 10 that he's actually very, very quick out of the blocks. He's very good at changing direction, probably one of the better agile players. His low center of gravity, his ability to cut, all of those are absolutely brilliant. He is also really good at different schemes. He saw a lot of gap, he saw a lot of zone. He was very good and very prolific in everything that he did. As I said, good receiver. His biggest problem is he needs a bit of coaching. He sometimes is a bit erratic when he's trying to find the hole. And sometimes, as you talked about pass protection is really important. His is terrible. Like, he is a really bad pass protector, right? He's one of the worst in this class. So he's going to struggle there. And I think the other thing is he sometimes runs a little bit like, this is going to be hilarious. He runs a little bit like Mr. Bean, where he runs like completely upright with that funny run. And the problem is when you run like that, it becomes easier to hit you because there's more of you to hit. I just had to do it. So he runs a bit like that. It's kind of, but I like, I do like him. I think he's a player that I think wherever he goes, he will have a fantasy relevant role. He could be a starter every single week. I think he's going to be at the bottom end of the top 24. He's going to be a running back 2, running back 3 kind of projected player, but I think he's going to have some some fantasy relevance there. So I'm a big fan of his. I also just like players that stuck it out of their college. Like he could have moved from Kansas and he didn't, and I do respect that quite a lot. A player that has no tread on his tires, but it's highly impressive, and I think he's a player you enjoy just as much as Bashir Tootin, or Tutton, however you pronounce it.
I think it's Tootin.
I think it's Tootin, but if I'm wrong, then
Being a Hokie fan, this is the sort of stuff I should know.
Now, this lad is quick. I mean, this lad is lightning. I mean, he ran a 4:32. He's one of the quickest backs. She needs to be. He's 5'9", 206. I really like Tootin. I think he is severely underrated. He has all the characteristics and traits of a player who can just do a lot of things in an offense. He can just go really, really quickly. Great acceleration. He's got great contact balance, great hands, decent pass catcher. Again, caught 50 balls in 2 years. Again, he's only played 2 years, which is pretty good. 25 touchdowns in 24 games, rushing, add another 4 in the air. 29 touchdowns in 24 games is impressive. Decent yards per attempt average. It was strange how he was used in the receiving game this year. He was kind of used almost like as a bailout. So he had a lot of very short receptions, which was a bit infuriating because that probably doesn't help him all that much. But I think for me, he is a really good north-south runner. He can really, really go and do a good, for me, I think there's not much that this kid does wrong. The only thing he's going to need to work on is ball security. That's going to be a really big thing he's going to need to clean up. There are times that ball kind of rocks a little bit, and he's got to be careful because at the next level, that's getting punched out. He probably wasn't getting that too many times in the old ACC. But I think for me, Tootin is an underrated prospect. I think for me, he's going to be a weekly starter. I think he's going to land somewhere, hopefully, that he can be used. And I've got him as my RB7 in this class at the moment. And I'm quite comfortable with having him there.
Yeah. I started my proceedings at 14 and he's now at 8. So I moved him up a significant amount after just digging in. I love him. Does occasionally miss a gap that opens up when running, but he's only played for 2 years. Give him some slack. He'll find his way.
Yeah.
Man, I can't believe you got Skatibo, Cam. I'm not a fan.
No, and listen, I can understand why people are not a fan of him. 100%. This is a guy who's got significant fumbling issues. I think he fumbled the ball 10 times over the last couple of years. There's only one word for it, slow. 4.65 40. Again, I think the 40 gets kind of put into this factor of running backs of, oh, well, that's really slow. I actually don't care about the second 20. I care about the first 10, the first 20. That's what I care about. It's very, very rare this guy's going to run 40 yards in a game in one go. So do I absolutely care about it? Not overly. He's a terrible pass pro blocker. He can't at all. And he's had a lot of workload. So we're talking about a player who has carried the ball over 500 times in the last 2 seasons. There's a lot of things to not like about him. I'm going to actually focus on the positives. I just see a diamond in the rough here. And I think if he goes into a team that knows how to utilize him and really get the best out of him, work on those things in coaching, and he's not asked to do the things he's not good at, I actually think he could be an elite, like a starting level running back consistently every week. For me, he just has this amazing balance and this fluidity that he runs. He can just get through traffic. Like, he reminds me of, do you remember Philip Lindsay's rookie year? Now, keep in mind, he was a lot smaller. But Philip Lindsay just had this great ability to glide and just go round players. I think Maurice Jones-Drew was a bit like that. I think of these sort of Emmitt Smith was a bit like that, and I'm not saying he's as good as these players, right? But he just has this ability to just get through players. And he's this natural like glide that it looks really easy. I think for me, he can break tackles. He's shown that he broke a lot of tackles. I think in one game he broke 12 tackles. I think against Mississippi State, which is pretty impressive. He's really good at waiting for things to open up. So he's very good at like not rushing. His headspace is really good. His brain, his football brain is pretty good. He's got all the things you need to be a really, really good player that he can control. Very, very good at like just spotting the holes, having to like move his route. Like, okay, that lane's not open up. Oh, but that one has. I'm going that way. He's very good at like audibles, thinking on the fly. Really, really good in those like third and short, fourth and short situations. He converts that at a really high percentage, probably higher than anyone else in this class. And that's going to get you work on the field. I just think he's got a lot of things that is going to get him on the field. The pass pro is probably the area that I am concerned about because that will get you off. But I think the fact that he's got, good receiving hands, he's got good natural ability. He will find himself, if he's in a situation, let's say the Raiders take him, right, as their second running back. I can see him in a competition where he could outsmart someone like Mostert fairly quickly because he'll bring a different level of energy. His ability to find holes will be there. And I think that a team will embrace and love him. It's just a question of like where he goes and how high he goes to a degree. So I like him. I like him a lot. I think there's a good flow to what he does. So I do have him above Tootin and Neal. This is pre-draft. A lot could depend on these sort of landing spots, but I think there's a lot to like about Scalpo that a lot of people probably are sleeping on because they look at the fumbles, they look at the high workload over 2 years, they're looking at his faults, but I think there's some underrated traits that people are not focusing enough on with him.
Yeah, I think I don't hate him. There's something about him that I just don't enjoy watching, and it shouldn't be a slight on him. It's just personal.
No. It's valid, right? It's all opinion.
Yeah. Where do you stop getting fantasy relevant in your list of running backs, Murf? Because it is a deep, deep class.
So these ones I'd say are weekly starters. I have 4 guys that I'd say are flex appeals. And then I have some dart throws that could, if all things sort of break right, there could be a career for them. But I would say probably outside of the next 4, the rest of the list, I'm kind of just thinking they might have spike weeks. Something could happen, but I'm not expecting miracles outside of the next 4 on the list, which are Dylan Sampson, Ollie Gordon II, DJ Giddings, and Damian Martinez. I think all 4 of those are going to be players who will find roles. They're not going to be workhorses. They're going to have these sort of scat back 1A, 1B roles. They're going to get work over time, whether that's immediately, whether that's later in the season, whether that's next season, remains to be seen. But I think they're going to get opportunities. I think they're going to have games where they'll make an impact, but I don't think there's going to be enough consistency of work, barring a significant change in circumstance, that is going to lead to them being an everyday or an every week starter in the NFL. From a fantasy perspective.
I think you're right. I'm just looking at my list here, and it's not exactly in the order at the top. It is at the top, but I have I'm big Ollie Gordon fan. So if I was to have those 4 players, to have him at the top of those 4, and then I've got RJ Harvey, Damian Martinez, and Dylan Sampson, anywhere between 6 and 12, so around the same sort of range as you've got yours.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Harvey. Where have I got Harvey? It's like 14, so we're not far apart. I have Brashard Smith. They're at the top of my dart throws list. I just think there's some stuff that needs to be cleaned up on them in order to be quite relevant for them. But, teams might fall in love with these players. I've got a long list of dart throws of about 15 players. Of players who I think, they could be a dart throw that it could pan out for them. I don't think there's that many bad running backs. Like, I only have 6 running backs, I'd say, that I'm just not interested in any way, shape, or form. Because it's interesting with the amount of injuries in the NFL and the fact that the running back situation is really bad in the NFL right now, that actually there's a role for a lot more players than perhaps there would be in most years. So I actually am more interested in more players than I would normally. So my rankings list is a little bit thicker than it probably would be normally because of the fact that there's so many vacancies that could pan out for players.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got some rosters that only have 1 or 2 running backs on them currently.
Mm-hmm. And not only that, it's a really, really decent class, which makes it doubly good for having a long list, right? You're not just making a list for the sake of making a list. There are good players and spots to fill.
Absolutely.
But just out of interest, have you got Jaquez Hunter on that list of yours?
Yes, he's in my dart throw list.
Okay, good. I didn't want him to be. He's at 15 for me, so I didn't want him to be one of those 6 people you had.
No, he's a bit lower than that for me. I'm not too high on him. 24, but to be honest, I'm not really wedded to anybody in that dart throw list. I think the 2 the 2 or 4 I would sort of say these are the 4 I'm keeping an eye on. Rashard Smith, RJ Harvey, Jordan James, and Taj Brooks. They're kind of the 4 that I think I will have more interest in than others. But we'll see what the landing spots in the draft capital kind of says and spits it all out.
Yeah, we are going to be absolutely blown apart by landing spot and draft capital within 12 days, as you mentioned at the start. So these lists could be completely null and void by 13 days' time, and just can't wait. I'm so excited. I love this. I love it when a player goes to a team where they can really make an impact for you and I in fantasy, because it's just so exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I realise we're 51 minutes in and we haven't done the wide receivers, so we're probably going to have to punt that to another show because I don't want to shoehorn them into a short segment.
Well, there is only like a couple of them, but yeah.
Well, we can talk about the top of the class. Why don't we talk about let's talk about the top of the class, and then we can go into some sleepers and other players. I think we can do that in a few minutes. So who do you have? Who do you think is sort of the top wide receivers in this class?
Well, I know you don't have Ted McMillan as your number 1 because you said so last time.
No, he's my 2. So he's in my potentially elite tier.
Yeah.
But he's not my 1. He's my 2.
I really want to know who you've got at 1. Who have you got at 1?
It's so controversial. I'm going to get cancelled over this. Now, Drew
McCoy from Tennessee.
I caveat this with an asterisk that I don't like. Travis Hunter is a player that we can't accurately rank because we don't know. Mm-hmm. If Travis Hunter goes and he's a pure wide receiver and he's not going to do cornerback duties, he will shoot up the board. If he's going to do split time or draft as a corner, then he moves down the board. So he is in a precarious situation. He's on 5 on my board because of that. He's a hard player to kind of say what his role is going to be until he's drafted. So number 1 on my board is a player who everybody loves to hate. It's Luther Burden.
Yes, Murf. I absolutely love that. I genuinely, for those listening and watching, I had no idea Murf was going to say that. No. And I have Luther Burden at 2, right? And I really, really, really wanted him put at 1. I think I probably got sucked in by everybody else, and I have Ted McMillan.
Yeah, see, I don't listen to anybody else, right? I absolutely love Luther Burden, and I understand why people are just not in on him, right? I understand that people don't like him, that people think that he's a bit of a diva, that, he didn't do it last year, and it's like, well, he's saving himself for the draft, right? It's worth a lot of money to this kid. He's demonstrated what he can do. He has a ridiculous catch rate. His catch rate's like 86%. And there's a lot of contested catches in that. He's got a great frame. He's an absolute baller. He's a great size. He's got good speed. His ball tracking's great. Everything about this kid I just absolutely love. He's got everything to be an elite player. He is, for me, and I hate putting these comps on players, But if he goes to the 49ers, he is the Debo replacement. Like, he's going to be Debo Samuel 2.0. Like, he's great in the short yardage. You can put him in the run game. You can put him in all these. He's a yak monster. He's the most versatile player for me in this draft. Now, he could go somewhere and go to a coach that has absolutely no idea how to utilize him, and he could be an absolute disaster. And that could easily happen. But if he lands in a really, really, really good landing spot, and, you know, some of those landing spots that I have here are the Commanders, the Texans. I'd love him at the Broncos. I think at the Broncos he'd be elite. I love him at the 49ers. I don't mind him at the Titans. I think that could be really interesting with Cam Ward, and they rebuild that offense. I think that could be really interesting. I just don't want to see him at, like, the Browns, the Panthers, the Patriots, you know, these kind of old school offenses that just don't do anything. Like, that would be a killer. Like, if he goes to the Patriots, and I'm out. Like, he'll move so far down my board, it's not even funny. He will go from 1 to like 7, because I genuinely think, like, his landing spot is really important for his skill set. But this guy is a guy that can do it all. And when it all shakes out, it wouldn't shock me that he was the number 1 wide receiver in this class if we look back at it 3 years from now.
I want to put him at 1 now. I want to slide him up.
Just do it. Just do it. Don't be scared of people. Like, just do it. Just go out there, be edgy. Be like me. Just be edgy. Just like.
Hey, look, listen. I've had some takes in my time. 2 years ago, I told everybody to pick up Puka Nacua.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. I'm moving him up to 1.
There you go. We've got Ted McMillan at 2. Ted McMillan is the most solid, most polished.
I think that's why I've got him at 1. He's just.
He is almost like landing spot proof. Like, he's going to be good wherever he goes, mostly, unless he goes to a crap quarterback. But I think he's going to be fine. Like, he's going to be a solid player. I like him a lot. My issue with Ted McMillan is he's like a technician, right? He is so good at what he does, and it's so clean, and like, when you admire the work and the skill and everything. But I don't love him. In the sense of, he just doesn't. It's so. I don't want to say robotic. It's just it's so harmonious, but in a way that it's just not fun. Like, I just watch him and I think, yeah, okay, well done, that's nice. Yeah, good job, buddy. Like, great. But he doesn't get me leaping out of my seat. He doesn't have those. He has showstopper plays, but they're just not enough. There's just. He's just not exciting. He doesn't get me going. Like, that is. It's a horrible thing to say. Because he's a great player.
This is really controversial, but he's very similar for me for AJ Brown. Like, I love AJ Brown and what he does, but he's just like, I just don't get excited by it. I have so much AJ Brown shares, and he does great for fantasy. It just, do you know what I mean? It's just, isn't.
I'm totally with you. I'm totally with you on that. You can admire the technique and the player, and he can put great stats up, but he just doesn't have that je ne sais quoi, that little bit extra of just that vavavoom that it just gets you out your seat. And Luther Burden has it in spades, right? And I think that was kind of the tiebreaker for me, was just the ceiling and the potential. So, but I have to admire Tetman, and I think he's a quality player.
Yes. Yeah. The amount of mock drafts I've seen where we've either got Luther Burden or Amari Hampton for the Broncos at 20 in the first. I'm just salivating at either. That would be great. I'd be so happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Murf, come on. 59 minutes in. I feel like we haven't done this wide receiver class any justice whatsoever, even though it is pretty shallow.
No, we haven't. We'll come back and we'll do the rest. I think I'll caveat, just so people are ready if they're drafting, that my weekly starters, I'll rattle off the list, is I have Golden at 3, Egbuka at 4, I have Hunter at 5, and I asterisk that with, I don't know if he's a full-time receiver, Isaiah Bond, and Iomanor is the other one. They're the 7 players I think are going to be starters for fantasy football in 2025, 2026, right? So they're the players I've got my eye on and where I'm kind of at. Landing spot will change some of this a little bit. Draft capital will change it a little bit. But ultimately for me, Hunter, it's really hard to put a grade on Hunter because we don't know what he's going to be until we know where he goes. I think Golden is probably the best of the rest for me. I like what he does, and we'll go into why on the next show. Egbuka is kind of this really high ceiling and high potential that he could really jump up, but he's going to need some help to get there. And Bond and Iomanor are good players. They're going to be really, really solid. They've got good route trees. They've got good ability to get open, both of them. But I just don't think they've got quite their good like wide receiver twos. I don't see them at that elite tier, elite level of play, and I don't think they're going to get there. And that's not a slight on them, but that is kind of where I have them.
Iomanor, I thought was a bit of a sleeper this year, but you've stolen him. Our top 5 are exactly the same. Well, no, in fact, they are exactly the same. I've moved Luther Burden back up to 1 where he should rightfully be. So our top 5 is exactly the same. I actually haven't graded Travis Hunter at all.
No, that's fair.
He has a write up, but he did not include it in my top 15 because I just have no idea where to put him. So
no, he's a tough. If you're doing your rookie draft before the draft, he is going to be an absolute nightmare. I think I went on a show and I said that I don't think I could take him with a first round pick prior to the draft because I just don't know where he'll end up.
I also wonder, there's a few leagues I play in where players get points for tackles and stuff when there's an interception or stuff like that. And I am slightly concerned that he's going to break fantasy football rules and metrics if his statistics are included in both, because there will be leagues where points are awarded for tackles or when there's a punt that's returned or whatever. And I think if you can get him in those leagues, he could potentially be an absolute weekly winner. Mm-hmm. But there can't be many leagues where that's the thing. Yeah, he is an enigma but he came out today and said if the team doesn't want him to play on both sides of the ball, then he'll just stop playing football. So
yeah, I just don't think you can say that.
No, I mean you can. He said it, but I just don't think it's feasible.
Yeah. Oh well. I think we'll know a lot more in 12 days' time what happens, but he is an enigma. And I think he wants that Showtime rep and be that guy. I just think that today's NFL is a lot more physically and mentally demanding. That's not a slight on the people that played 30 years ago. It really isn't. That's not a knock on Dion at all.
Chris Carson.
Yeah. You're never going to let that one down, are you? You're never going to let me forget that. I just think it's fair that he is a player who has just had a very solid career, Chris Carson. Just very much like a player that everyone will forget. But yeah, look, I think Travis Hunter is just a player who's got to be really careful in what he does and how he thinks about things and how he proceeds. That's it's going to be a really important thing moving forward for him.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's going to be super interesting to see what happens with that one. 100. Right, Rush Nation. Murf and I will be back to cover the wide receiver rookie class in a bit more detail because they do deserve it. It's just as we have mentioned, and everyone else seems to be mentioning, the running back class is mad deep, and as per usual, we got carried away. But hey, what are you going to do? Sue us, or please don't. Either way, whatever.
It's just what happens when you talk about Chris Carson. These things happen.
I can't do it. I can't do it. Rush Nation, that is going to do it for today's show. If you have watched on YouTube, we would really appreciate a like and subscribe. Hit the bell. You can see Murf doing his thing as we leave. If you're listening on the audio platform and on Spotify, hit the bell. Again, it will tell you when we are out. And if you want to leave a comment on Spotify, I think it's swipe up. I'm not entirely sure, but Murf's literally, when you watched the Sunday Morning Football back in the day, and thank you very much, Steve Perkins, for your comment. Good job, fellas. That's the kind of stuff you get when you're on the visuals. The guy who sign language, British Sign Language, Murf is essentially doing to me as I'm talking, the sort of weatherman variant of fantasy football. It's getting a little bit much. Rush Nation, until next week, as always, don't forget, keep rushing.